Masters in the abode, very nice to see you, everyone, brothers and sisters around the world. Firstly, let me say Happy New Year to you all. This is our first session for 2020, so I hope it's a good one today. Today, I'm back in Australia. Last time I shared with this group, I was on my way to Africa. I was in Africa, now back in Australia, and going back to Africa again next week. But today I'll be talking about some of the activities that Tzu Chi's been doing in Australia, and in particular in regards to the bushfires that we're having at the moment. Now I will start with that right now. And before I start as well, I'd say thank you to Sister Tzu Chi for letting me share today. I know it wasn't quite our turn in Australia, but given all that's happening here, I thought it was quite a good opportunity to share with you today on what's going on. Okay. The Australian bushfires. The Australian bushfires have grown in intensity over the spring and summer. Now, we have bushfires in Australia every year, so this is not necessarily something new or different, but what's different this year is how devastating these bushfires have been. And it's really difficult to convey just how catastrophic these bushfires are. And if you look at this picture here at the bottom of the PPT, you see all these flames. They're very big and very aggressive. And on the right-hand side, this was the New Year's Day newspaper front pages in Australia. And every newspaper is talking about these terrible bushfires. But to give you, as I say, it's really difficult to explain if you're not in Australia, just how bad these are. But the damage to our economy, the damage to the infrastructure from these bushfires, which only started in September, is greater than that done during World War II. So this is worse than the war for us in Australia. And the first time in Australian history, we actually have refugees in our own country. And we have tens of thousands of people right now running from their homes. Now, they're running from their homes not because of violence or war, but because of the devastating effects of these bushfires. That's how bad they are. And even though Australia is a rich country, we have lots of resources, we are struggling as a country to deal with the effects of these bushfires. And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Okay. And I'll start with this. This is a newspaper, a TV clip from the day before yesterday. But this gives you a sense of what it's like in Australia right now.
The ring of fire around Sydney is as angry and as frightening as we've seen. 20,000 people are tonight in the path of the mega fire rolling down the Blue Mountains into the town of Lithgow. We were warned of catastrophic conditions, and right now there are 7 fires burning at emergency level. A powerful southerly is currently moving through, making conditions for firefighters even more chaotic. Chris O'Keefe begins our coverage.
A mad scramble in the middle of Lithgow. In this onslaught, a garden hose was the best weapon they had, as the monster from the Blue Mountains roared down. Family homes went up, a count of more than 20,000 under a brutal ember attack.
Okay, so you can see from this video here, this town is only about 40 or 50 kilometres west of Sydney, and 20,000 people's homes were under threat. And these fires are so big that the fire brigade cannot stop them. You cannot put these fires out. The best that you can do is divert them away from where people live and just keep them in the outback. Okay, now I'll show you another one.
The reality of this weekend's fire threat all too clear.
If you can leave, then you must leave. We cannot guarantee your safety.
And right now, the Navy is being mobilised.
So this short clip is very telling as well. That man speaking was the Premier of one of the states of Australia, Victoria, where Melbourne is, if you know Australian geography. He is on national TV telling people that the government of Australia cannot guarantee your safety because of bushfires. I mean, this is unprecedented in our history, that the government, the country cannot look after people and that you're up to yourself. The military is involved now. The Navy, in this particular instance, had to evacuate 1,000 people from one town on the New South Wales-Victorian border. The people had no way to escape, so they had to run to the beach and stay on the beach while all around them the bushfires were burning. The only way of escape was the Navy to go in and then evacuate people by ship. Other parts of the country, the Army, the Air Force are doing similar activities.
Emergency services have just warned communities to the east of Albury along the Victoria-New South Wales borders, towns near Toowong, including Toowong, that they must evacuate now. Police are on standby helping those evacuations take place. Authorities say if they don't leave by midday, it may become too late to leave.
Yeah, I think if you could catch what this reporter said, he said that another part of New South Wales, this is southwest of Sydney, about 250 kilometres. So this is a different fire than the ones we've been talking about already. But on the same day, this is happening exactly the same time, that you have to leave. Police say you must leave by midday. But if you look at the bottom left of this picture, the time is 7:06 a.m. So at 7 a.m. in the morning, people in this town have been told they must evacuate by lunchtime. So they have 5 hours to literally run for their lives away from the bushfires. Otherwise, the government cannot guarantee their safety and it's not safe. So you imagine what it would feel like for those people, that you have to pack up all your belongings, your pets, your family in the car, your precious belongings, important documents, and literally run for your life to get away from these bushfires.
Area here at Nowra, where fire trucks are being prepared and police are helping to coordinate the effort to move tens of thousands of people north out of those bushfire affected areas. We saw from before dawn an seemingly endless stream of traffic on the Princes Highway, tens of thousands of people trying to move out of those areas. Authorities have been working around the clock trying to keep the major roads open so that they can get not only those people out, but also supplies back down south to residents who may be remaining in those areas. We saw long lines outside of stores and outside of petrol stations yesterday, people trying to get supplies, and simply they couldn't keep up with demand. On top of all this, there's still bushfires burning.
And this is yet another area, this time in the southeast of Sydney, about 200 k's south, where 10,000 people need to evacuate urgently as well. And what this reporter was talking about was the queues at the petrol stations. There's not enough fuel. So people are told to leave, so everybody rushes to leave, but they don't have enough petrol in their cars. So everyone goes to the petrol station. The petrol station runs out of gas. There's no petrol left to get in their car. So then they have to abandon their cars, leave what's in their cars behind, and then try to get a ride with other people that have petrol in their cars, rely on their kindness to help them evacuate. And you could see there the lines of traffic, they're literally tens of thousands of people on the move, just running away from these fires. Now, I'll show you this clip as well. This is both funny and sad at the same time, but this is a clip of a magpie. This is a native Australian bird. This is not a pet bird, but just listen to the sound that this bird makes. So I think you can pick that sound. That is the sound of fire engines and what have you. And as I say, this is a wild bird that is not a pet or anything. But this bird has obviously heard so many fire engines, the sirens, emergency service vehicles over the past few months, that now it has changed how it communicates to mimicking the sound of the emergency service vehicles. As I say, it's a little bit funny, but it undermines the seriousness and the sadness of the situation here at the moment. This is a very typical scene all around Australia right now. These massive, massive fires burning out of control. And here the firemen are really not trying to put the fire out. They are just trying to contain it, to stop it coming across the road, destroying the road and blocking off access for vehicles on this road. There's been flames reported 70 meters tall. That's as high as a 22, 23-story building, and then if you have a fire front that is maybe 30 or 40 kilometers long times 70 meters high, you can get an idea for what this is like. It's a really tsunami of fire that's coming towards these people. This is another typical scene. Again, this type of bushfire raging out of control. You have a fireman here with this very small hose, and you can see that almost the futility and hopelessness that how can you contain such a massive fire with a very small amount of water. And the reality is Australia is in the grips of a drought. There is no water in these areas to fight the fire with. So even though we have firemen on the ground with hoses, we have helicopters, planes dropping water and fire retardants on the flames, it actually has almost no impact because of the size of these fires. Here's just another scene of destruction. You can see the fire is just absolutely everywhere. Okay, here's another scene looking at the smoke problem that's generated from these fires. In the foreground is a village, is a little town, so those are houses. And then you go further to the right, you see this massive smoke cloud. So because these are houses in the bottom of the picture, you can get an idea just how massive the smoke plume is coming off these bushfires. Here's another scene here. This fire is being lit intentionally by the fire service. So you see the fireman there, he's got that container. He's actually setting fire to the bush here. And the reason for that is they want to try to stop the main fire that's coming towards this road actually hitting the road. So because they can't put it out with water or anything like that, the only thing they can do is deprive the fire of fuel. So if they light a small fire, so they do a controlled fire first, then that should stop the main out of control fire hitting this road. So if it hits this road, it cuts off a major transport and supply link, which is not good. But also if the road maybe act as a block and stop the fire from progressing further. But in many cases, unfortunately, even this type of activity doesn't work because the conditions are so bad. These controlled fires get out of control and you have even more problems on your hands. This is a scene in southern Sydney. So this is just from yesterday. All the pictures I've shown you are from the last 48 hours in the Sydney area. This is, the stream of refugees just coming into Sydney. This is a bridge at the southern end of Sydney, and you just see, car after car after car coming in, running away. Now, these people, all they have is probably what's in their cars with them. They don't know if their homes have been destroyed, if they've left animals or loved ones or precious possessions behind. They don't know what state they're in or when even they can go back, and even where they're going to. So the government set up evacuation centres and sports grounds and fields like that where people are going to seek shelter and information. This is what they've left behind. This is just a sample of pictures of what it's like in the towns and villages in the countryside of New South Wales at the moment. You just see utter devastation. All the buildings are burnt to the ground. You see the picture in the middle. Those people got trapped. The road was blocked, so their only way to save themselves and their vehicles was to drive into this river. And luckily it's shallow there, so they were okay. So they parked their vehicles in the river and then had to be evacuated from there. So they've left their vehicles there. So this type of scene is very common around the state at the moment. Okay, how widespread are the fires? Well, actually they're covering the whole of Australia. Every part of Australia, including islands off the coast, are on fire. There are dozens dead already, and in fact, the situation is so fluid and chaotic, we don't actually know how many people have died, but it's in the dozens. Thousands upon thousands of properties have been completely destroyed. This map on the right-hand side are just the fires recorded in the last 7 days to the end of the year. So the last week of 2019, these were the fires that were burning at that time. And you can see it covers the entire country. However, there's a massive cost as well as human life and property in that the effect on the environment. Since September, 500 million animals, kangaroos and koalas and what have you, have been killed by the bushfires. 500 million animals have been burned to death as a result of these fires. It is truly catastrophic. Okay. I mean, how big are the bushfires? Well, we count the bushfires summer to summer. So they started in September. From September to now, there's already been 5.9 million hectares of land burnt. Now, that's a very big number. In square kilometers, that's 59,000 square kilometers. This is just in 4 months. But how big is that really? Well, Taiwan, the main island of Taiwan, is 32,000 square kilometers. So in 4 months, 1.8 Taiwan's worth of land has been completely destroyed. I mean, that gives you an idea just how enormous this bushfire problem is in Australia at the moment. And we still have another 3 months of the bushfire season to go. So this number will just keep increasing. And even where we are in Sydney, 4 million hectares have already burnt. So we're already 1.2 Taiwans just from New South Wales. It's a truly massive problem. The fire is not only affecting the countryside. Here's a picture of Sydney Harbour before the bushfire started. And this is a fairly iconic shot. If you've ever visited Sydney, you would have a picture like this in your camera, I'm sure. It's the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House. This is what it looks like now. It's covered in smoke. The visibility is very short. You can only see maybe 150, 200 meters. The smoke is so thick on a lot of days. So even though there's no fire in the downtown Sydney, there is so much smoke in the countryside that it's blowing in and it's blanketing the whole city in smoke. This is affecting people's health. This is very, very unhealthy to breathe in the smoke. And it's affecting a lot of businesses. I mean, a lot of restaurants and cafes, as you can imagine. This is summertime. People like to eat outside on the footpath or on the beach. You cannot go outside. You can't exercise. You can't do anything outside. Especially if you have any type of respiratory problem, asthma, what have you, you have to stay inside. Here's another iconic Sydney scene. This is Bondi Beach. If you've ever seen any reality TV show, you see Bondi Vet and Bondi Rescue. It's all filmed around this very famous beach. This is what it looks like now. It also is covered in smoke completely, and the authorities are recommending people do not spend time on the beach because it's very bad for your health. But as well as fire, we have this other phenomenon that's happened in Australia called a fire tornado. And these fires are so big and they put so much heat into the atmosphere that they cause massive storms and tornadoes. So at the end of last year, a 3-minute storm only hit the north shore of Sydney, which is actually incidentally where Tzu Chi Sydney is located and actually where my family lives. But within 3 minutes, the storm was so severe, it knocked down thousands of trees and it left 55,000 homes without electricity for 5 days. And this is just a scene. This is a picture from a street very close to my house. You see the power lines are down, trees are down, and it's a very difficult, dangerous situation to clean up. This is actually a picture of my neighbor's house. This is one house next door. We live at number 20. This is number 18. The trees fell down onto their driveway, but underneath those trees is their car. And they were very, very lucky that there was no one in the car. This storm hit in the mid-afternoon, but they weren't picking their children up from school or anything like that. Another 10, 20 minutes later, then there quite possibly would have been someone in that car. Their car was completely destroyed. They couldn't get into their home. They had to come through our house, go over the fence to get into their property. And it was like this in the whole area. And you imagine you go from living in a first world country with all the conveniences of modern life to a third world country in 3 minutes with no electricity, of course, all the food in your refrigerator and freezer spoiled. With the roads blocked and what have you, you can't get out. Mobile phone coverage stops. There's no internet. You don't know what's going on. So very, very quickly, you can descend back to a very basic state of living. And it really shows that we live a very much of an illusion of a modern, safe life when just is a situation, there's an opportunity to do good. This is a firefighter in our street. All of these firefighters are volunteers. They are unpaid. And usually they are only called to bushfires 2 or 3 days per year. But this fire season is so bad that a lot of them have been working for 2 or 3 months now. So they've been away from their jobs. They're suffering financially. But of course, our family being a good Tzu Chi family, this is my daughter. We got a whole lot of chocolates and things and went out and gave them to the firefighters. And these people, as I say, are volunteers. They were working from 3 a.m. in the morning to 11 o'clock at night, clearing the trees, cleaning up the power lines to make the area safe for us again. But Tzu Chi also provides a lot of love and compassion. So this is the situation. What are we doing at Tzu Chi Australia to help the situation? Well, we've been very active. On the 21st of December, so just before Christmas, we visited one rural community about 320 kilometres north of Sydney that had been completely ravaged by bushfires, and we provided them an $800 cash card. Now 800 Australian dollars is about 2,400 ringgit, or about 16,000 NT dollars, 600 US dollars, that type of thing. We decided to give cash cards because although every family was affected by fire, their individual circumstances are different. Some people needed food, other people needed shelter, and what have you. So the most pragmatic, practical, fast way that we can provide relief is with a cash card. We did this with the support of the local council because obviously, although many people are affected by the fires, not everybody is. So we have to make sure that we give this support to the people that need it the most. So we work closely with the local council. As I said, 320 kilometres from Sydney. So it was a very long drive. It was a very, very hot day, 41 degrees Celsius. So it was a very challenging day for us to go up there and do this distribution. We prepared for 300 people to come. Only 81 attended on the day. Now, the reason for that is varied. Firstly, communication. In this farming area, there's no telephone still. There's no internet. Mobile phone coverage is not that reliable. So many people didn't even know that we were actually there on that day. Also, people were very worried about the ongoing bushfire threat. So the bushfires were still there. So some people came to tell us to say, look, we have to get the cash card and leave immediately because maybe the road is going to be closed off, or we're worried about our house. The fire is close to our house. We want to go back to protect it. Or their animals, their pets. One person told me he had 20 dogs in his shed. He wanted to go back to make sure that they were okay if the fire came back. So, and also as well, these people were very traumatized, and some people were just too frightened, too scared to leave their properties. So we prepared for 381 came on the day. This shows the sequence of events for what we did. We started here in Eastwood, where I am right now at our Tzu Chi office. We started very early in the morning. The first people were here from 4:30 a.m. onwards. We had breakfast here. Of course, at Tzu Chi, you always have something to eat. You never have not enough to eat. So we had a group of volunteers making breakfast and lunch for us, for those that were going to do the distribution. We then got all the equipment and goods that we were distributing, got them ready and put them on the vehicles to go north. This is a group on the bus. We had all sorts of vehicles. We had a big convoy going up there. We had a big bus like this. We had vans, cars, private vehicles and what have you, taking everything up there. This was a view out the window driving along. And this was the view for, dozens and dozens of kilometres, kilometre upon kilometre. You would just see the burnt out trees on the side of the road. This house you can see here through the burnt out trees actually survived. So that person is lucky that their property is destroyed, but their house is okay. And then you would drive past and see that properties have been burnt down as well. But it was like this for kilometre after kilometre. When we arrived at the site, this is a small country town. The population is probably only around 1,000 or so. We set up a registration centre outside the community hall. These are our volunteers busy setting that up. We unloaded the bus. These are blankets. We gave out the technology blankets as well. and then carrying all the blankets inside. And as I say, it was a very hot, difficult day. This is inside the community hall. Where we did the distribution was in this little town hall. You get these type of buildings all over Australia. This is a 100-year-old building. It's a very strong wooden building, but it has very little ventilation. It's just got a few lazy ceiling fans that you see there. It was very hot inside. But despite that, the volunteers, we set up the venue for the aid recipients to come in. This is the registration team having their pre-event briefing. You can see the volunteer in the grey there has the process flow check sheet to go through to make sure that we register people properly as they come through. This is the cash card distribution team. Also, they had a lot of paperwork to make sure that they prepared properly, that we recorded who we gave the cash cards to make sure it was the right people and they got the right amount and what have you. Then the people started arriving. People arrived even before we arrived there. There were people waiting. We started the distribution at 1 o'clock, but the first group, the advanced party, arrived around 10:30. There were already lots of people waiting because people were anxious to come and get some support from Tzu Chi. So people would arrive, they'd be registered outside first. This is another picture of the registration area. Because this is a farming area, there are lots of animals, lots of people brought their dogs along. So this young Tzu Chi here is actually looking after that person's dog while they go in and get their cash card distribution. And because it's hot, you can see it's hot because that dog was looking at that glass of water very thirstily. Luckily though, inside the hall where it was stiflingly hot, we had volunteers giving drinks to people, so to the aid recipients, so they would feel more comfortable. So we gave them drinks as well as some snacks to eat. What we also did is as well as giving the physical support in terms of the cash card, we also gave moral and support as we do at Tzu Chi, and showed compassion and love. So what the recipients are doing here, they are looking at the lyrics of the song, the Tzu Chi song, I Jia Ren. But what we did is we got the English lyrics for the song and had them sing this together with us in English. And this really was very beneficial. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Most people were crying with that song. It really touched the heart. It's a very beautiful song. But for these people traumatized by these terrible events, that I Jia Ren really made a big difference to them. We also had our choir sing for them as well, and everyone is sitting there waiting patiently. We started the distribution. Master Cheng very kindly gave a letter for us to distribute to each recipient, which we read out to them. And in that letter, Master Cheng put the blame very squarely on these bushfires, on human-induced climate change. And she said that very boldly in the letter. And it went down very well with the recipients. And in a lot of countries around the world, there's a lot of political discussion around what's causing, is climate change man-made or not? But at least Tzu Chi taking a very strong stance to say, yes, it's people's misuse of the environment is the cause of this problem, was very good. And it went down very well. And people were very appreciative that Master, but also that Tzu Chi was willing to say this quite categorically, that we are the cause of this problem ourselves, and therefore the way to resolve this problem is that we stop doing harmful things to the environment. And as I say, it went very well. And you think that message is very sensitive to people that have lost everything in a bushfire, but it went across very well. We gave everybody a blanket as well, a Tzu Chi blanket, and we took the opportunity to really explain Tzu Chi to these people in the country. They'd never heard of Tzu Chi before, and we talked about Dai Technologies' recycling efforts, and people were very impressed with that, and as well as Tzu Chi's worldwide efforts as well. We also had people bowing, and this is a very interesting exercise because we have to be very careful in a country like Australia asking people to bow. So we made it optional, of course, and we explained that there was no spiritual significance to this bowing, but that this was just a form of respect. It's a way of we show respect in Tzu Chi and also in Buddhism and also in Asian culture in general. And it went across well. And we said to people, if you don't want to bow or you don't feel comfortable doing it, of course you don't have to. But everybody did. I'm very pleased to say everybody related to our message. They were very thankful to Tzu Chi and were very respectful in return. This was the first group. We had to demonstrate the bowing. You can see there's a bit of mixed results, but everyone was doing their best to try and do that. At the end of our formal part of the speeches, of course, at Tzu Chi, we show compassion and don't expect anything in return. But it's nice to get something in return, of course. And at the end, this lady here just jumped up out of the crowd and just said, "Can I have the microphone?" which I gave to her. And she spoke on behalf of the whole group, just spontaneously, thanking Tzu Chi from the bottom of her heart, saying how we touched her and the community, and that we are a very special organization, and we've really done a lot to help them get through this very difficult period. And even though she hadn't planned this, I saw her say to the audience, "Is it okay if I speak on your behalf?" And everyone was nodding with her saying, "Yes, yes, yes." And they gave us a very big clap at the end. So, I mean, I think this gave us all a great sense of fulfillment and happiness that, you know, fulfilling the Tzu Chi mission of providing relief and compassion really resonated with this community and was enormously successful. After the formal part of the festivities, we then went into the distribution. So people came up in groups. After they'd registered, of course, we gave them the Da'ai blanket and a book of Jing aphorisms by Master. Then they went to the cash card distribution desk where they got the Master's letter and the cash card. They signed for that. And then after that, you can see on the counter behind, we had another drink station so people could get a cold drink before they left. After they received their cash cards, we really tried to engage with the community and talk about Tzu Chi and what we do as an organization. So there's a Da'ai technology area there, but also these sisters are giving out Jingxi aphorisms, which we were sharing with the recipients. These are another two sisters explaining the bamboo bank to the recipients as well. And we had 81 recipients, as I said, but we gave out, I think, almost 100 bamboo banks. We took the time to explain the purpose of these, why you would do this, and small acts of kindness every day can really, create positive karma. Not that we explained it quite like that, but we're saying that you can do this to create a positive, good feeling for yourself and what have you. And it went down very well. So everybody took a bamboo bank. We said again, like the bowing, this was optional, but everybody really understood what we were trying to achieve, or what Tzu Chi tries to achieve from the bamboo bank, and took those. And they committed that they would give those back to us next year when we visit them again. And you can see here the level of engagement between the Tzu Chi and the recipients. This lady is so interested, she's absolutely enthralled with what Sister Josephine is telling her, and she's explaining the bamboo band concept and what have you to her. And this is very much the feeling of the event captured quite nicely. But of course, this picture really captures it all. That's why we were there, was to show love and compassion to people that were suffering, help alleviate suffering of those in need, which we did. And this picture, I think, summarizes that very well. As does this picture. This is a funny picture because we have one of our little old ladies, Tzu Chi ladies, talking to a little old farming lady. And they both got on very well with each other, both very short and quite elderly. But this lady, the farming lady, her name was Jackie, I spent quite some time talking to her. She lost everything. The clothes she's wearing are the only clothes she has left. And in fact, you can see it says Merry Christmas on her t-shirt. And it says Merry Christmas because this was she got that from a charity, or was donated from her. Her home, she lives on a rural property, her home, outbuildings, vehicle, everything was destroyed. She just managed to escape with one car and her pet dog. And she had to leave the area, and she's now living with her son until she can sort things out. But I asked her what is the plan for returning back to your home, getting it fixed? She has no idea. She has no idea what she will do, how she'll do it. She's by herself. Her husband's passed away, so it's very difficult for her. Other people we talked to, their stories were absolutely harrowing. You know, they were just so sad. One farm family that I spoke to as well, they've suffered through drought, so a lot of their animals they had to give away. Now the bushfires have gone through and destroyed their farm. They have no food for the animals to eat and no water for them to drink. So now they are faced with the prospect that they have to shoot all of their remaining animals that weren't killed in the fire. So they actually have to go out and kill all of their cattle, you know, their cows and things. I mean, it's just truly horrendous. And they were saying they can't buy any food for them, even if they had the money, even though the food is very expensive. They can't sell the animals because no one wants to buy them. They can't even send them to the slaughterhouse for them to be turned into meat for someone to eat, because the slaughterhouses are full, and they said we don't want any animals until February. So they have no choice but to go home and then kill all of their animals. I mean, it's truly horrendous, some of the stories that we heard from people. At the end of the distribution, it was all pack up time, so everyone's busy packing up and putting things back on the bus and the vehicles to go home. Our documentary team were very busy, and they did a very good job on this day. And these are two of our documentary team members here, interviewing some of the affected families and capturing stories like I just shared with you just now. And they were also able to visit some homes like this. These were some of the recipients, and this home was quite close to where we were. So we were able to send a documentary team to visit this house after the distribution. And you can see that this person had a very large house and is completely destroyed, absolutely destroyed. There's nothing left there at all. You can also see this is another one of their buildings, you know, where they kept their farm equipment and what have you, again, completely destroyed outside. And you can see behind where the bushfires come up the tree line up the bridge, and it's just spread to their house and destroyed that. Okay, what are we doing next? Well, we have a lot more work to do. We've already decided the next town that we will help, and this is a town called Hualien. It's 450 kilometres from Sydney. It's north of Sydney, heading towards Queensland. There's 200 affected families in this small town, and we are going there to do the same distribution on the 1st of February. Now, this map on the right-hand side is an interesting one to look at. This is the official government fire service map, and the arrow is showing the small town of Hualien in that gap. All the black shaded area is land that has been completely destroyed by the bushfires. So you can see almost 90% of the land in this area has been burnt to the ground. And the blue triangle diamond shapes, that's where fires are still burning. So there's still 3 fires in this area, but you look at the scale of destruction, this area is almost being completely destroyed. Helping us, or as we've gone about our work doing this, we've come across other charities, and what's pleasing to see is that you see people's intrinsic Buddha nature manifest in times like this. And as I said, there's always a silver lining on dark clouds. And we came across this other charity called Blaze Aid. They're helping farmers and rural communities put their lives back together after these bushfires like Tzu Chi. And we started talking to this volunteer here, Natalie. Now, Natalie is a nurse. She lives in Sydney, but she quit her job and to volunteer full time for the next 6 months with this other charity. This is where she will live for the next 6 months. She set up this little tent, and she's sleeping on the ground. And you can see at the bottom left-hand side here, there's a insulated container where she keeps her food, and she's got a little coffee cup on the top. You know, to the top left hand of the picture, you can see she's got her washing hanging out, where she's washed her clothes by hand, hung them out on that line. Behind her tent is the tractor, because this is just just under a porch, you know, just a lean-to area in this country area. So she's given up her job, her family, just for 6 months to come out and do this. And she told us financially she is struggling. She asked the government, could they give her some type of income assistance while she does this? But the government said no. So she's willing to just work completely unpaid for the next 6 months to do this and live in this tent. So even though she's not a Tzu Chi person, you can really see through cases like this that people do really have an intrinsic Buddha nature, and these times of absolute adversity that encourages them to come out. So the comment I made, hundreds and hundreds of volunteers and people like her around Australia. Okay, with that, I will end. So thank you very much, everyone, for that. I hope you found that interesting and just understand the situation that we face here. You know, I think 10 years ago in Australia, no one could imagine that we would have firestorms like this going on now. And it's just so tragic. There's no end in sight. So there's going to be a lot of work for Tzu Chi around Australia, all of our different branches to do over coming months to help bushfire victims. Okay, thank you very much. Going on.
Hi, good morning. Excellent for that. Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for Brother Robert to give us a very clear information about the Australia bushfire, which is getting severely. So actually, this is bring me to recall that when every time our New Zealand or Australia volunteer came back to abroad and to make a report to Master and say they have live in a paradise and they have no disaster happen in the past decades years ago. So and Master always remind them, please be sincere priority, and with don't say that you always are in a paradise and in a heaven and there's no any disaster will happen one day. So Master say we must recruit more living Bodhisattva, continuing to explore more people to join this good deed, so that we cultivate and to continue to practicing what the Buddha teaches to do in good deed, so that we accumulate our good karma instead of we are enjoying and we are like sizzling to finish our blessing. So actually the world is in a great crisis now. As Master says, we must to be mindful to protect our earth. And luckily, recently for our Jing product, we are going to have a new product to be launched in the future soon. Now we already have the product, which is we call the plastic wood, because we are reduce the garbage, which is the recycling problem for the plastic or the wasting papers that we throw away on the recycling center. So now we start to collect those recyclable items and we turn into a bricks, which is called plastic wood bricks, 连锁转塑胶. And also it's kind of like a wood, a plastic wood, which is to reduce the cutting of the forests and trees. Since now we heard that Brother Roberts mentioned that there's a mass places and because of the fire and it's already destroyed the land that we have, and for the trees that is already damaged and it's been burned up. So it's remind to Master teaching that saying the Buddha say that actually we are in the era of decay. More and more impurities will accumulate and thereby bring more disasters of the water, wind, or fire. And no matter where you are, and Master mentioned that actually the anger is the desire like a fire. So the first is for us to what to say is like the best way for us to mitigate the natural disaster is to live with a vigilant care and sincere piety, to purify our hands and our hearts and minds. So this is a message that I try to pass on for what Master's teachers. And thanks a lot for Brother Robert give us very latest news about the bushfire, and hopefully we everyone have a sincere play for the Australia bushfire will quickly to be to get off the fire, and we hopefully there's raining seasons come and bring I remember there's a story about a bird, a little bird who wants to get off the fire, put off the fire by using the wing, the wet to dip the wet water and to go through the forest and to try to use the wing to drop some water and so that can get off the fire. So as far as we are in a sincere piety, and definitely they will our vows will reach up to the all the heavenly beings and for the Buddhas we hear. So 愿我们就是像小鸟不要森林小大火，然后就是小鸟的虔诚还是可以上达诸佛。Yeah, I hope this is the message they are trying to pass to everyone. So maybe now I can try to answer a question for the past few weeks they've been asking, and let us see the questions for question 1. Actually, the question is asking how to balance between work and family and also contribute time to Tzu Chi. And I think the question we're asking maybe because this volunteer still have a family need to actually I think let's say that if you have to work to earn your living, and of course you have to concentrate on your job. After you finish your job, I think for you to spend time, and you can, instead of watching TV or do some entertainment, which is like for your own personal enjoy, it's better than you use the time to do something which is benefiting people. So I think there's no much time to what to say is like how can I say, it's like actually just spare your time, free time to do good things. And this is, you can balance between your work and your family. If your family members need your care to take care of, then of course you need to, the priority is to concentrate to taking care of your family. If your family, they all are healthy, maybe you also can invite your family members to join you, go to the Tzu Chi activities, and so that you can still contribute the time to Tzu Chi. So I think this is trying to answer for this question.
Okay, dear brothers and sisters, okay, my deepest apology because of some error in the communication. Sister Lisa is not sharing today. She will share another time. Okay, very grateful to hear from Brother Robert himself, the situation in Australia. I think many of us also follow up, but listening live, that is really another thing to hear, that at this point of time it's no longer the firefighters could contain, could stop the fire, is merely to contain that is really one. They really could. So very grateful that many gathered today to extend the prayers, and let us keep Shifu advice, be with sincere we pray to the 10 directions, and also share about the happy, I think the bird, the sparrow, do believe in that, do have faith in this power of prayers. At the same time, we also play our role in protecting the environment. But this part of time, the heart of a sincere prayer, have faith that it will reach up there. Looking at the bird, we could see, despite the bird cannot stop the fire using its big flying the thing that they dip its wing into the water, hoping to with the droplet of water could stop the fire, despite knowing it's impossible, but the birds still keep doing that. So at the end, the bird was exhausted and almost died, but then it touched the heart of the heaven. That's what all of us, with our power of prayers, we could do that. And also now we have so many of us, not only one bird, now we have many birds. Brother Robert, Australian family is not alone. We also heard about the Indonesia side, they also facing flooding. There are so many disasters around. Those countries that are in peace, we all also lend our support. We also pray with sincere piety. We can't be there, but have faith, all of us, our heart are all with you together.感恩师父 for guiding us today. So sorry last minute for asking sư父to answer our questions. Okay, everyone, we all come together, and next Saturday we will hear more. There are a lot of very insightful, touching stories. 感恩师父 and 感恩 Brother Robert for heartfelt and wisdom sharing. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for your presence. Hope that each of us could sustain the Dharma joy and take in another piece of our Master and Hualien love to our life. Let us please make 3 vows to the Buddha and Dharma Master as we depart to apply these teachings in our daily life. Let us pay our respects to our teachers of life, universal truth. Once together. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. And the bow to our beloved Huang Shifu, who could join us today. 感恩师父，感恩 everyone. See everyone next Saturday. 感恩，拜。